isn't this exactly what Labour are doing constantly? Because they keep saying,
we're not talking about Labour. You've rung up, but we're not talking about Labour.
Any political party.
No, we're not talking about Labour. You've rung up as a prospective parliamentary candidate for Reform UK. So let's talk about Reform UK.
Good afternoon. I am a prospective parliamentary candidate for the general election whenever it's going to be held. What's interesting, though, listening to some of the comments, I mean, we're out every day delivering leaflets and surveys. We're getting a lot of feedback on the doorstep. I've just been out for a couple of hours this morning, and it's such a familiar, well, it's not a pattern. It happens every time we go out. We talk to people in what is very much a Labour stronghold, ex-mining communities. The Conservatives are shot to pieces here. They're never mentioned. They're a laughing stock. But the ex-Labour voters, they are all saying the same thing. We don't know who to vote for. We don't trust Starmer. We don't know what the policies are. When I talk about Reform UK, one of the comments is often, "Oh, that's Farage's lot." Well, not strictly speaking, but they say, "Yeah, you've got my vote." Common sense. It makes a lot of sense, some of the things that you guys are saying. There's a guy this morning that I handed a leaflet to, and he said, "You've got my vote. I saw you on the telly. You're doing great, aren't you?" So that's one element of it. I don't think the Conservatives can do anything after 14 years to repair the damage that they've done. They're shot to pieces. But secondly, something else that I think you'll find interesting, I defected from the Conservatives about 18 months ago. Been a lifelong Conservative. Reform UK sit policy-wise, pretty much where the Conservatives were in the mid-'80s, slightly right of centre, that's all. We're not an extreme right-wing party. And the party themselves have tasked me with talking to people from other political parties who are wanting to defect to Reform UK. So I speak to people on a daily basis, from parish councillors to ward councillors to leaders of councils to deputy mayors to mayors and higher. And they want to know my experience of defecting across to Reform UK and, just the nitty-gritty of some of the policies and how the party operates. Mm. Inundated is too big a word, but this keeps me very, very busy.
Okay.
So two things.
Can I just ask you, because we're running out it's coming to the end of the hour, so I just want to talk about some of the things that you've mentioned already. You said that on the doorstep you were hearing two things. One, that people aren't quite sure what Keir Starmer represents in terms of the Labour Party. And then the second thing you said was that people liked your common sense policies. Which common sense policies do they like?
Right, gentleman this morning said, look, he said, you're raising the threshold to pay income tax to £20,000. He says, that just makes a lot of sense to me. He says, I'm self-employed. He says, but how many people are on top-up benefits which wouldn't need to be paid if work actually paid for them? So that just makes a lot of sense, and economists have crunched the numbers, and yes, it does add up with an element of efficiency savings from within the government. Obviously,
because hang on a minute. So this is interesting, right? So have you costed how much the Exchequer would lose as a result of raising the income tax threshold to 20,000?
The party has, yes.
Well, how much is it?
Oh, I don't have the figures. That's way above my pay grade. But if you look on Reform UK,
I'm looking.
website,
I looked on the Reform UK website, and to be honest with you, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. I had a quick look, and actually, I have to say, to your credit, to your party's credit, it's actually a nicely laid out website. However, I did feel, David, that it was very much lacking in detail. I'm quite surprised that you're saying it's way above your pay grade, because as a representative of Reform UK who is saying that they're knocking on doorsteps, and this isn't particular to you, by the way, because I find this, whenever any political party comes knocking on my door, I get extremely frustrated because they never seem to have a grip of the detail, and I don't think it is above your pay grade. I think if you're going to represent a party, represent the party. So I'll take
that on board, but the reality is whenever we put out common sense policies, the Conservative Party picked them up.
But the problem is, how do you know it's common sense policies? Because, for example, if you are raising the tax threshold, but you can't tell me how much that's going to cost the Exchequer, but at the same time you're arguing, well, in fact, we can make savings across the board from government departments. What you're saying is, we don't really understand what the budget is that we will have if we were to win the next general election, but we just believe that we're going to make a whole bunch of cuts, even though they're completely uncosted. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it is costed, but isn't this exactly what Labour are doing constantly? Because they keep saying,
we're not talking about Labour. You've rung up, but we're not talking about Labour.
Any political party.
We're not talking about Labour. You've rung up as a prospective parliamentary candidate for Reform UK. So let's talk about Reform UK. So you don't know. So you don't know the figures around tax and spending. I'm very curious about your immigration policy, actually. So this is broadly speaking, as I understand it, there's going to be The Home Office will be abolished, and there will be a Department for Immigration. And according to Richard Tice, he's going to implement were he to magically win the next general election as party of government, he has said we've got to freeze non-essential immigration, one in, one out. How would that work?
Well, it's right what you said earlier, actually, about people don't understand. Most people think that all immigration is illegal immigration. That's obviously where there needs to be a lot of focus. But in terms of net immigration...
Isn't that a little bit to do with the fact that Reform UK, and I know Farage has got nothing to do with you at the moment, but he's a very close friend of Richard Tice's. And I tell you, isn't a lot of that misunderstanding coming from your side of the electoral scale?
Well, Nigel Farage is our honorary president, so he's got a lot to do with the party, of course, and where he moves... That. Yeah, and where he moves in the future,
explains a lot.
We'll see what's the space.
But the misunderstanding has come, therefore, from Reform UK, hasn't it? In part, along with the Conservative Party at the moment.
Well, I know the people that put together our policies, and I know them very well. So, and it's not from one person. There's quite a lot of people involved.
Yeah, but so broadly, you recognise that there is a huge amount of misunderstanding around legal and illegal immigration. You've just said it. You've also said that people don't understand that legal migration is in fact legal. And my point to you is, which I've still not heard an answer to, isn't the reason people are confused because people like Richard Tice, like Farage, like Sunak, like Braverman have deliberately gone out of their way to weaponise immigration, and it has been in their interest to blur those boundaries, hasn't it?
I wouldn't say it's weaponised because, again, I talk to people in South Yorkshire who are seeing illegal immigrants in hotels. They're seeing them working during the day. They're doing Uber jobs.
They're not working during the day. They're not allowed to.
Yes, they are. You're absolutely right. They're not allowed to. But it's well documented in the national press. These people have been exposed. Illegal immigrants have been exposed for working on a daily basis.
Well, there are processes. Number one, right? There are processes to deal with that, if that's the case. If you were to report them to the Home Office, then they would then be presumably detained and questioned. But also, are you suggesting that it's not a good idea that asylum seekers work? Because I actually think, David, it's a very good idea that asylum seekers are allowed to work. And I'll tell you why. Because currently the Home Office is in such a huge crisis. It's taking at least 18 months for the first round of immigration applications to be viewed by officers. So would it not make sense? Would your voters not want asylum seekers who are sitting around, barred from working, existing on less than 50 quid a week? Would it not make sense to allow them to work?
Would LBC employ people that have come into this country illegally with no passport, no documentation, and absolutely zero history to check them out? That's downright irresponsible.
France does it.
Downright irresponsible.
No, it's not.
Doesn't make it right.
On one hand,
listen.
People at your end of the immigration debate complain constantly about the cost of putting people who have come into this country through small boats on the back of a lorry. They say it's very expensive. We're having to, pay a huge amount in hotel bills.
That's all indisputable. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Absolutely, we are. Well, yes, but the reasons we're paying that much are disputable. Anyway, you're saying you argue it costs an awful lot of money, but on the other hand, you refuse to allow them to work, to pay their way. It doesn't make any sense. I thought you all supported working people, don't you?
We don't know who these people are. I don't think people would want to work with.
But once they come into the country, do you agree that they are then officially recorded?
At some stage, yeah, but the backlog that you just mentioned.
Well, they've got to be officially recorded, otherwise you wouldn't be able to put them into hotels. So now we have an official record of who they are and where they are. Does it not make sense to create a programme that would allow them to work?
We've a record of who they say they are. There's no way of checking most of these people.
Let's look at this one in, one out idea, and you want and Rich Tice wants to freeze non-essential immigration. What is non-essential immigration?
We've had 10 million people come into this country since Blair was elected. Have we had an equivalent improvement in infrastructure, in doctors, in dentists, I'm a local council. I know the state of
David,
quick,
I've got to get to the news, and Tim Humphrey always tells me off because I'm always late. So believe you me, I get a right old drubbing. What is non-essential immigration?
Well, the obvious one is stopping the boats coming across because...
No, but you yourself have rather wisely made the distinction already between legal immigration and those people that are crossing in small boats and lorries. So what is non-essential immigration? This is the absolute cornerstone of Reform UK's migration policy. So what is it? Because apparently you want to freeze it.
How many people have we got in the UK that are unable or unfit to work or don't want to work because is that partly due to the benefit system? I don't know. They'll have to answer that question. But there's an argument for bringing people in to do essential work such as in care homes and in the NHS. But we've got a ton of people out there who are not currently working because the benefit system is over generous to them. And we'll go back to the £20,000 income tax threshold.
Oh, David, I wish you'd called earlier, my friend, because actually I would have loved to have a bigger conversation with you about it. But I do appreciate that you called. I still don't think I have an answer to the cornerstone definition of your immigration policy, non-essential immigration. I don't think you ever defined it, did you? But listen, call me again. That was David White from Barnsley in South Yorkshire, who is a prospective parliamentary candidate for Reform UK. Thank you very much indeed.